Good morning and welcome to Grand Rapids, Michigan's second largest municipality. What drives the pride and progress of this West Michigan city and regional area? And what might it have in common with Southeast Michigan? We decided to drive over and find out for ourselves. Today we'll talk to a wide range of important leaders. Our guests will include a very diverse group of Grand Rapids movers and shakers from the public and private sectors, nonprofit organizations, grassroots community leaders, and cultural institutions. It's Sunday, December the 9th. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight on the Road. On the day of the first big winter snowfall of this season, we drove slowly and carefully across I-96, past Lansing, to the west side of Michigan. As we entered Grand Rapids, most facilities and businesses were closed due to the bad weather, but not City Hall. It was open for business and the first stop of our 2 days in the city. We begin our interview with Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss. And as we're driving here, we see all these signs for Beer City, Cool City. Obviously a big difference in terms of how you're branding yourself now versus the past. What is Grand Rapids today?
That's such a great question. So I actually think the beauty of Grand Rapids is that we're still many things to many people. Some people still refer to us as Furniture City. I think we have a lot of pride in our history, that our city was built by lumberjacks and the furniture industry, that at one time at the turn of the century we had hundreds of furniture companies along our river on both the east side and the west side. The reason our dams are in the river was to prevent log jams for the wood coming down the river that they were using to make beautiful furniture. And a lot of people still hold on to that. You'll hear some people still refer to Grand Rapids as Furniture City. I would say in the last 10 years we've been better known as Beer City, USA. And
how did that come about?
I was going to say, it's a great story. So there was a time when there was competition between cities to be known as Beer City. And we had this little friendly competition between two cities, including Asheville, North Carolina, and Kalamazoo. And we really promoted it. And it was kind of this, I mean, truly, it was competition between cities. And one year we were named Beer City USA, and we really grabbed on to that title. And it was right at the time when we started to see a significant uptick in the number of craft breweries. And then, of course, we're home to Founders, and we're very proud of that. They are a local craft beer company that is really leading the charge when it comes to craft beer throughout the country.
And I noticed in the lobby the sign that said, "Welcome to Grand Rapids, Sister City," and it named all of these different places around the world. So obviously there's sort of a world vision to Grand Rapids that you see yourself beyond the length of your nose.
Yeah, we sure do. I mean, in addition to the work that we do, I'd say with other cities here in the state, and then our connections nationally, we are really proud to have a number of sister cities. In fact, just last month I spent a week in Perugia with the mayor of Perugia, Mayor Romisi, and learned all about our sister. We celebrated our 25th year anniversary of our sister city relationship, and I learned about the culture and a lot of connections between the city of Grand Rapids and their city.
What are the priorities as mayor and priorities for this city?
One of our priorities right now, which is more project-based, I would say, is we are in about the 8th year of working on restoring our Grand River. So in the heart of our city, we have the Grand River, and if you look out the window, you'll see 5 dams, and it dams up a beautiful rapid that used to be there. In fact, Grand Rapids is named after the rapids before they were dammed up. And in the heart of our city, we have about an 18-foot drop, natural drop in our river. And so we've been embarking on a process, as I said, going on 8-9 years, where we are working with a number of state departments and federal departments to remove the 5 dams and restore the rapids to their natural state.
What's the biggest challenge for Grand Rapids these days? All cities have challenges.
And so right now, we are really wrestling with the challenge around affordable housing. So the prices for housing has skyrocketed over the last couple of years, which is really interesting.
We're hearing that in Detroit too.
Yeah. And so before being mayor, I was on the city commission for 10 years. And 10 years ago, we were dealing with a foreclosure crisis. And now we're dealing with the inability to find affordable housing. So affordable housing is a key priority of ours. We've spent a number of years, actually about 3 years, working really closely with the community to improve community and police relations. So that continues to be a priority for us. We want strong neighborhoods, so we're looking at, what can we do to support neighborhoods and strengthen our neighborhoods. And then we're working really hard on how do we continue to be an environmentally sustainable city. We have goals related to getting to 100% renewable energy, and we're charting a path on how do we get there.
You're a Democrat. I'm hearing that young people are flocking to Grand Rapids, particularly the city, millennials, and that things are changing. Yeah. True?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing that in cities all over the country. I would say Grand Rapids, the city itself, has always been a much more progressive part of our county. So if you look at the county as a whole, I think you're absolutely right. The further you get out from the heart of the city, you have many more conservative roots, as I should say.
Sure.
And you're absolutely right. With this last election, I think you saw some significant shift in our community where many more people voted Democratic. So I serve as a nonpartisan elected official, which I actually really love being nonpartisan and being able to work across the aisle. My philosophy has always been local issues are not partisan issues.
From your perspective, because you've made several trips over to Detroit, what do the two cities have in common? What do they need to be working on together for Michigan?
Yeah. You're absolutely right. So when I became mayor, I worked pretty hard to start building relationships with other mayors throughout the state. I serve on what's called the Urban Core Mayors, so it's the mayors of the 13 largest cities in the state of Michigan, and Mayor Duggan serves on that as well. So I've had a chance to spend quite a bit of time with him and really look at what are some priorities that we all share as large cities. I really fundamentally believe that the strength of our state is deeply, deeply intertwined with the strength of our cities. And there's a lot of cities in our state that are struggling. And so I would say yes, we've developed a stronger relationship with the East Side. I think we recognize that we rise and fall together. And then we have common goals. There's a lot of infrastructure needs in older cities.
Absolutely.
And we have been to Lansing over and over and over again talking about the need for infrastructure.
That's something that you guys can all lobby together on, right?
We all lobby together. In fact, we're part of a larger group called Grand Valley Metro Council, and we are part of a pilot with SEMCOG, which is over in Southeast Michigan. You're familiar with SEMCOG?
Oh, absolutely.
And we're doing pilot work around asset management and looking at infrastructure. It doesn't sound very exciting to some people, but our infrastructure, especially our underground infrastructure that provides clean water and gets waste out of our system, our roads, all of that is absolutely critical to a healthy and strong city. We're asking more of our public servants, especially our police officers, yet we have fewer police officers because of the funding issue, and we can't afford to sustain an increased cost there until we get additional funding. So that has really been what tied us together and continues to tie us together as we look at how do we ensure appropriate funding to cities so that we have ample public services, police and fire, that we're able to pay for public spaces like our parks. Those are our three largest costs. And every city throughout the state is looking at that as well.
What do you make of the pink wave that just recently hit the state of Michigan and across this nation to a great extent?
Yeah. Well, of course I'm biased because I'm a woman and I'm the first female mayor of the city of Grand Rapids, and I have felt for a long time that we need more women around the table. That there, I would say even now, even with this pink wave where we had a whole host of women get elected, more so than we have in a very long time historically. We still are not at 50%, so I still believe that we need more women elected and we need women in leadership. So when I look at the outcome of the election, of course I'm unbelievably happy and excited. I think there's real value at having women in leadership. But
you think they'll do a better job than the guys or get it, finally get things done?
You know, I have great respect for leaders who are both men and women. And so to me, both men and women can be, I should say, equally effective leaders. But I have to say that I'm very excited that Governor-elect Whitmer was elected, and I look forward to working with her.
When do you find time to do your other job? You're a social worker by profession. You still teach. How do you do that and be mayor of the second largest city in this state?
Yeah, it's I'm busy. So you know, so I when I was elected as mayor, I really wanted to maintain my connection to my profession and maintain my license as a social worker. So I was pretty deliberate about making sure that I stayed connected for a whole host of reasons. I think it keeps me grounded. I love the world of social work. When I'm done serving in public office, I plan to get back into the field full time. And so I do teach part-time at Grand Valley, and I love it. I love staying connected to students. I can tell you it makes for a busy week. I just had class this morning. Over the weekend I was grading papers. But you know, you make sacrifices and you figure it out. You
have one more year left on your term, I believe?
Yeah, so I'm up for re-election next year.
Yeah, you're running again?
I am running again. I love this city and I love working with the people that I work with. And you know, for all the great things, we still have a lot of problems that we need to solve. And I tend to be a problem solver.
Final question, 10 years from now, will people be talking about flocking to Grand Rapids or flocking to Detroit?
Ooh, well, of course I have to say Grand Rapids.
Okay.
But I think that there's real value and strength for people to flock to both.
We'll be back with the city manager of Grand Rapids right after this. Stay with us. Austin, Texas. I would think a big difference between Austin and Grand Rapids, but you tell me, is there a real big difference between the two, and what attracted you here?
Well, thank you, Chuck. Obviously, the one difference people, readily think about is the weather.
Especially on a day like today.
But even there's extreme. There's extreme heat in Austin and extreme cold or winters in Grand Rapids. But beyond the weather, I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the communities. Austin is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. It's the 11th largest city, and the time that I was there, the population increased almost 300,000 residents over 9 years.
Wow. And
Grand Rapids, although not growing as fast as Austin, is one of the fastest growing communities in the state, and certainly one of the premier destinations here in the Midwest, if not, for all the mid-sized cities across the United States. And so there are a lot of similarities between those emerging communities.
As city manager, talk a little bit about your job and what that means here in Grand Rapids versus the mayor's role.
The mayor and the other commissioners are responsible for being accountable to the constituents that have elected them and setting policy for the city and defining broad policy. And then my job as manager is to manage the city, to be the chief administrative officer, chief executive officer in managing the resources on a day-to-day basis, the professional management of the organization.
You are the first African-American city manager for Grand Rapids. How's that going?
It's good. You know, it comes with tremendous responsibility. I mean, there have been a lot of people who've done a lot of great things in this community, and by no means would I be here as the first African American city manager if it were not for like those of like Lyman Parks, who was the first African American mayor here in this community, who trailblazed and broke the glass ceiling a long time ago. And so I know that I'm the first, but hopefully I will not be the last.
What are your goals? What would you like to accomplish during your tenure?
Well, I think both short-term and long-term. I think short-term, there are some things that we're facing as a community real immediately. I got to propose a budget here in a few months for the fiscal year 20 budget, and there are a lot of things and priorities that we're going to be wrestling with. We have to maintain the vibrancy of our economy, that we are a growing community and a place where employers want to continue to do business and relocate and come to this area. And you know, as we continue to experience that prosperity, I think in the long term, and I don't want to think too long beyond. You
don't want to get ahead of yourself.
You don't want to get ahead of myself, but I do want to think. You know, when it's all said and done, I want obviously people to think that I left this city in a better place than when I came here, when I arrived.
I understand you have a strong religious background, pastor the church, and sort of made a pivot there, left the church to come do this. Right. That had to be a tough decision.
It was. I've been bivocationally in ministry all of my career. I've been in government 23 years, and I have had a call on my life not only to be a public servant, but also to be a faith leader. I've pastored in several communities, 3 different churches in several communities back in Texas. And this is the first time where I'm just a full-time administrator, because the demands of the job require us to be such. But I do think the call on my life is still there, and I am required to be a servant leader, no matter whether that's within a faith context or just within what I'm doing right now. I am still called to serve the public, and that's why I love doing this job. Whatever I do will be certainly in the will of God.
Long term, where do you see Grand Rapids 10, 15 years from now? What kind of city do you think this will be, or hope it will be?
Well, I think it still will be a growing city, a thriving city. It will be a city that will continue to be diverse, compacted, and connected.
Coming up, Grand Rapids community leaders discuss how they are trying to make this side of the state inclusive for all. We'll be right back. For those who don't know, what is ICCF and what's its mission?
ICCF, or the Intercity Christian Federation, is an organization that's dedicated to equitable opportunity, affordable homes, and thriving neighborhoods in our community. And the way that we achieve that is through demonstrating compassion for individuals who are experiencing homelessness through our shelter. We come alongside people who have a vision for economic vitality in their own lives by providing classes that help them learn skills like financial capabilities and the basics of home ownership. And finally, we're building inclusive housing throughout the city. We have over 400 units of housing that are aimed at creating inclusive housing opportunities for people regardless of their income. And at ICCF, we want to be a part of ensuring that people who want to stay in their neighborhoods have access to an affordable place to call home, or a place to belong.
Ryan, how do cities do that and do it successfully? Because the story that you're telling me now is the same story I hear in Detroit, the same story I heard in Washington, D.C. when they were going through a lot of regentrification, and countless other cities.
It's a significant challenge, no doubt, but I think it starts with awareness. We have a bit of collective amnesia when it comes to the history of housing policy in our country and how it impacted core cities. People who've lived in those neighborhoods for a long time are not unaware of the injustices that were going on in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. But for many who had access to wealth and who didn't live in those core neighborhoods, many of us have amnesia as it relates to our own national history.
Do you feel like with all of your efforts, with all of the various fights and uphill battles, that you're making progress?
You know, I'm a person of hope and faith, and I believe that we are making progress, however incremental it is. I think one thing I'm excited about here in Grand Rapids is that there's a real recognition that there's no silver bullet when it comes to solving the housing crisis.
The leaders hear that and understand
I
it.
think the leaders hear that and understand it. I think there's a real spirit of collaboration here too, where we're saying, you know what, ICCF, the nonprofit housing providers in town, we're not going to be able to solve this by ourselves. Like we'll play a role.
So there's buy-in.
There's buy-in. The city leadership has bought in. They're recognizing this as a critical need in our community, and they're really trying to address those policy issues that have been barriers potentially in the past. From the business community to the local government to nonprofit sector, I believe much of the incremental change that's happened or improvement that's been made is due first and foremost to those neighbors raising their voice and speaking up.
So that's just a taste of what's happening in Grand Rapids today. But if history is a good indication, most keen observers will tell you that what really drives West Michigan forward is business, philanthropy, and the cultural arts. We'll shine our spotlight on that in part 2 of our Grand Rapids series, which will air later this month. Coming up, we remember President George H.W. Bush and longtime Detroit News political columnist George Weeks. Both appeared on our long-running program. Recently, reporter, political aide, columnist, and Michigan Journalism Hall of Famer George Weeks died in Traverse City at age 86. In the 1980s and 90s, he often appeared on Spotlight with then-host Jim Harrington, questioning big newsmakers.
Mr. Lucas, you've just described the process you used to bring you to switch parties. Could you describe the process you're going through now as you consider running for governor?
Continuing the questioning, George Weeks.
Well, Governor, as Jim said, you've addressed the legislature now 25 times. What was so special about this last one? What is the state of the judiciary?
The interesting thing about the state of the judiciary,
right next door, there's a big building. They call it the 8th wonder of the world. Well, Houston, get ready for the wonder number 9. The most stirring political comeback since Harry Truman gave him hell in 1948.
And in 1992, when we traveled to Houston for the Republican National Convention, then President George H.W. Bush sat down with Jim for a one-on-one interview in our Spotlight special.
Michigan is, like most of the Midwestern and the industrialized states, have taken a beating. Their economy is still not in the best of shape. No. How do you sell yourself in Michigan?
Well, first place, you say what would happen if the opposition came in. They want 45 mile per gallon CAFE standards. That would say to every auto worker in Michigan, shut her down, man, you're out of business. First place, scientifically, it'd be very hard for an auto company to design their regular line of cars for that kind of outrageous regulation. And so I don't think the workers there know that. I don't know how the unions that back the governor of Arkansas are going to be able to explain that to their workers. You define the opposition, and then you say, here's the programs that we've got, whether it's job retraining or whether it's new education or whether it's controlling the growth of this outrageous deficit spending.
May both men rest in peace. I'm Chuck Stokes. Have a good week.